The story kicks off way back in the day when the world was completely run by gods, spirits, and magic users. The ultimate demon lord, Leonis Death Magnus, ruled over the entire capital of Necrozoa with an iron fist. But then, an all-out war broke out, and 6 legendary heroes stormed right into his city to put an end to his reign of terror. After the heroes took down every single one of his top generals, Leonis was absolutely furious. He could not believe that humans, who he viewed as nothing more than bugs and ants, actually had the guts to stand up to him. He was ready to unleash his dark fire and burn them all to a crisp, but the heroes pushed him to his absolute limits. With his army practically wiped out, he remembered a promise he made to Roselia, the goddess of darkness. Realizing this was the end of the line for now, he decided to take the loss. He cast an undead sealing spell, vowing to wake up in 1,000 years to take his throne back. And just like that, the era of the demon lord Leonis came to an end. Fast forward 1,000 years, and the world is completely different. We are now in an era driven by modern science and technology. 2 young girls are checking out a ruined area that had been hidden away from the world for years until a massive earthquake exposed it. They are down there looking for any signs of creatures known as voids, trying to figure out if this place is one of their nests. By the time they reach the 7th floor underground, they still have not run into anything magical. Wearing earpieces to stay in touch with headquarters, they keep exploring and eventually stumble across some completely scorched statues that are incredibly old. It is pretty obvious this place used to be a royal palace. Then, they find this massive door radiating magical energy. The top of the gate is covered in some ancient language that modern tech cannot even begin to decode. The girls split up to cover more ground. The girl named Roselia gets this weird feeling like she has seen this writing somewhere before. The second she touches the door, it just swings wide open on its own. Roselia goes on high alert, but suddenly, the room lights up completely. Right in front of her is a massive crystal, and she realizes someone is trapped inside it. For some reason, the tech strapped to her belt just completely dies. Inside the crystal, the sleeping demon lord Leonis is flashing back to the day he made his promise to Roselia. He knew his power would awaken in the form of a human child after 1,000 years, and he had accepted his defeat back then just to keep that promise. Knowing Roselia went far away after that, Leonis finally opens his eyes. Seeing Roselia trying to break the crystal, he uses a language spell to figure out what she is saying. Assuming this girl is just a common thief, Leonis decides to hand out a death sentence right then and there. He shatters the magical barrier crystal completely. The blast knocks Roselia to the ground, leaving her stunned for a minute. When Leonis gets a good look at her, he is totally blown away by how gorgeous she is. Still, being a demon lord, he cannot go back on his word and figures he has to take her out. But before he can make a move, Roselia opens her eyes and asks what a little kid is doing all the way down there. Leonis looks at himself and realizes his reincarnation ritual totally glitched out. Instead of his true form, he is stuck in the body of a kid, specifically the human form he had back when he was known as a hero. Roselia asks him how he ended up locked inside that crystal. Seeing a scared little kid, her maternal instincts kick into overdrive, and she immediately pulls him into a tight hug. Leonis is super offended, thinking a demon lord like him should never be treated like a baby. But honestly, her chest is so soft that he ends up falling right asleep. A little while later, Roselia offers him something to eat. Leonis realizes he cannot taste food the same way he used to, and he complains about how totally useless his new human body is. The fact that he literally passed out just from being hungry is a huge embarrassment for a demon lord. Deep down, though, he definitely enjoyed how Roselia was holding him, and he knows she is just trying to keep him safe. She introduces herself properly as Roselia Ray Cristalia, a 15-year-old swordswoman currently training at the Excalibur Academy in the 7th Assault Garden. Since she already assumes he is just a kid, Leonis rolls with it and tells her he is 10 years old. Leonis drops his full name, Leonis Death Magnus, feeling super confident that his legendary, terrifying reputation has been passed down through the generations. He expects her to be trembling in fear, but Roselia has absolutely no clue who he is. Instead, she just tells him his name is cute. She assumes some kidnappers must have locked him away down in these ruins and is surprised he does not know anything about their real enemies. Meanwhile, in another part of the ruins, her maid Regina spots something dangerous and immediately draws her weapon. It turns out these monsters, known as voids, first showed up 64 years ago, and even now, humanity has absolutely no idea what they are or what they actually want. There are a ton of theories floating around, and some even say these monsters come from a completely different world. When Leonis finds out that voids usually show up in ancient ruins, he realizes he forgot to ask the most important question. He asks her what year it is according to the Holy God calendar, guessing it has to be somewhere around 1447. Riselia is totally clueless about the Holy God calendar and explains that, according to the human calendar, it is the year 64. Suddenly, the entire place starts shaking violently. Regina radios in to report that a massive void has been spotted. Riselia immediately pulls Leonis close to cover him, promising she will keep him safe. Leonis feels a really weird sensation. His new 10-year-old body's hormones are definitely acting up. Smashing through the debris, a terrifying void appears right in front of them. Riselia tries to attack, but her hits do absolutely nothing to the beast. Leonis decides to step up and wipe the thing out in a single strike, but his clothes are about 6 sizes too big, causing him to trip and fall flat on his face. The void is just about to crush them when Regina swoops in out of nowhere. Armed with some serious firepower, she blasts the creature and deals massive damage. The first thing she does is look at Leonis and ask who the heck this kid is. Riselia quickly says the boy is under her protection and promises to explain the whole crazy situation later. Regina then commands her weapon, which she calls a holy sword, to shift its form. Leonis watches her closely and quickly realizes that this power is not magic at all. Despite taking such a heavy hit, the giant void is incredibly still standing. Even Leonis is a little surprised by how tough it is. Since Riselia does not have a special weapon of her own yet, Regina yells at her to get out of there immediately. Putting Leonis' safety first, Riselia grabs him and sprints away from the fight. Poor Demon Lord. Absolutely nothing is going according to his master plan. His reincarnation magic totally glitched out. He is stuck in a ridiculously weak human body. The world has changed so much, he has no clue how to rebuild his kingdom. And to make matters worse, these ugly bug creatures have completely overrun his castle. Suddenly, a small crystal in their path rapidly grows into a massive, terrifying new void, and this one looks way stronger than the last. Riselia screams at Leonis to run away and draws her regular sword to face the monster alone. Unlike Regina, she does not have a holy sword to fall back on. Leonis figures he should probably show off a tiny fraction of his power, since there is no way this girl can take down a void by herself. But just as he is about to cast a spell, Riselia violently shoves him out of the way, taking a brutal, direct hit from the monster. She collapses, critically injured. Even as she lies there dying, all she cares about is keeping him safe. She begs Leonis to run and find Regina so he can get to a secure place. With her dying breath, she actually apologizes for failing to protect him. Looking down at her, Leonis feels a genuine pang of sadness. He calls her a foolish girl, realizing she threw herself into the line of fire because she honestly thought he could not dodge it. This triggers a flashback to when Leonis was just a human on the brink of death. Back then, the goddess Rosalia saved him and asked him to join her. Snapping back to the present, a whole pack of powerful voids completely surrounds Leonis. They launch a relentless attack, but they cannot even put a scratch on his magical shield. Leonis is absolutely furious. He pulls out his magical staff, admitting to himself that the girl was incredibly brave and that he actually started to like her. After all, he had spared her life earlier, just to gather intel. With zero mercy, Leonis unleashes a brutal slaughter on every single void in the room. Looking at the charred remains of one he hit with a flame blast, he notices its bones actually survived the fire. That had never happened before, proving that his magic in this new body is significantly weaker than it used to be. Normally, a demon lord could not care less about a random human life, but Riselia put her own life on the line to save his. Leonis does not have any healing magic, but he does know a highly forbidden spell. He casts it on Reselia, and her spilled blood literally flows right back into her body. Her eyes flash a brilliant red, and a unique crest forms on her thigh. Leonis knows he just did something totally insane, and she is probably going to be furious when she finds out what he turned her into. Meanwhile, Regina finally manages to defeat the other void. She tries radioing Reselia over her earpiece, but gets dead air. Leonie is sitting right next to Reselia's body, casually trying to figure out how her communication device works. Suddenly, Reselia gasps awake. The very first thing she does is pull Leonis into a tight, panicked hug, frantically checking to make sure he is okay. Leonis is genuinely shocked that Reselia is more worried about him than herself. Reselia checks her own body for wounds and is completely bewildered that she is still breathing. Leonis quickly lies, claiming he used healing magic to save her. This just confuses Reselia even more. Leonis is baffled. How do these people not know what magic is? Have humans really become entirely dependent on advanced technology? Reselia asks him if his magic is some kind of holy sword power, which leaves poor Leonis totally clueless. She explains that some books at her academy mention rare holy swords that possess healing abilities. When Leonis asks what a holy sword actually is, Reselia breaks it down for him. It is a mysterious power that awakened inside humans so they could fight back against the voids. When the voids first invaded, kids suddenly started developing these powers, which usually took the physical form of weapons, earning them the name holy swords. Regina, for example, wields a dragon-type holy sword. Humanity still does not know a whole lot about them, but it seems a person's holy sword depends heavily on their personality. Reselia has not awakened her holy sword yet, which is exactly why she has to rely on her magical tech devices in combat. Right around then, Regina finally catches up with them. Seeing the destruction, she asks if they ran into a void. That jogs Reselia's memory, and she frantically asks Leonis what happened to the monster. Leonis plays dumb, saying he just got terrified, squeezed his eyes shut, and when he opened them again, the void was magically gone. With the immediate danger past, they pack up and take Leonis with them. On the way, it is revealed that Regina is actually Reselia's personal maid. As they walk, Leonis cannot help but stare at Regina's bouncing chest. Catching the 10-year-old kid staring, Regina jokes that this boy is growing up way too fast. After a long trek, they finally arrive at the 7th Assault Garden, humanity's ultimate stronghold built to survive the void threat. Looking at this massive fortress, Leonis wonders if this is really what the world has become after 1,000 years. Suddenly, the story flashes back 6 years. The 3rd Assault Garden was in a desperate fight for survival against a massive void invasion. A younger Reselia and Regina were huddled in a civilian shelter, completely terrified. Even so, Reselia tried to keep Regina's spirits up, assuring her that her father was out there fighting the voids and that humanity would definitely win. People had been evacuated to safety ahead of time, but the violent tremors from the battle outside were shaking the shelter and terrifying everyone inside. Trying to stay strong, Reselia promised that once she awakened her own holy sword, she would protect Regina, her people, and the entire Assault Garden. She kept rambling about all the fun things they would do once the war was over, just trying to keep them both calm. But as the situation outside visibly deteriorated, Reselia started to panic. Her father, mother, and sister were all out there on the front lines, and she desperately wanted to be out there fighting alongside them. She told Regina that her family never loses and that everything would be totally fine. When the brutal war finally ended and the survivors were allowed out, the reality was absolutely devastating. The 3rd Assault Garden was completely wiped off the map. Out of the entire population, only about 15 people survived the massacre, including Reselia and Regina. Every single one of the 1,000 swordsmen who went out to fight had been killed in action. Reselia was completely shattered. She broke down and apologized to Regina for lying, crying over her false promise that everything would be okay. Snapping back to the present day, the group is standing on the massive bridge connecting to the 7th Assault Garden, the place they now call home, and the city Reselia has sworn to protect. Thinking back on her past, Reselia quietly promises herself that she will never lie again. Looking out at the colossal structure sitting right in the middle of the ocean, Leonis is blown away and asks how they managed to build an island that massive. Actually, it is not an island at all. It is basically a massive ship that can move from place to place across the ocean. Riselia reports in to headquarters, and Regina is totally impressed to hear they made it out alive. Riselia also shows off the wound that Leonis healed. It turns out Regina initially thought Leonis was just one of the refugees who fled from the war zone. When the Voids first attacked, a lot of people were forced to abandon the battlefield and run for their lives, and tracking down those survivors is actually one of their main missions. Anyway, starting today, Leonis will be staying right here at Excalibur Academy. Regina heads out to go grocery shopping for dinner, while Riselia tells Leonis to go through a specific newcomer processing door. She then heads toward a different exit to take care of her own things. Leonis is absolutely losing his mind right now because every single one of his plans is falling apart. His original goal was to rebuild his army and wipe humanity off the face of the earth. But now, humans have advanced way past what he expected, and to top it all off, these void monsters have entered the picture. But the absolute worst part is that he is stuck in the body of a little kid. Feeling desperate, he summons his old loyal servants, Blackus and Sherry. It has been 1,000 years since they last saw their master. Blackus immediately asks what on earth happened to his body. Leonis explains that his reincarnation spell glitched out, leaving him stuck in the human form he had before he became a demon lord. This is actually the first time Blackus is seeing Leonis in his human hero form, since they originally met after Leonis had already taken the demon lord mantle. Sherry, on the other hand, thinks Leonis looks incredibly adorable in this form, and she is visibly blushing. Leonis gets annoyed, thinking she is making fun of him, which prompts her to quickly apologize. Leonis fills his servants in on this massive artificial island built by humans, mentioning that it is called the 7th Assault Garden. He figures that means there are at least 6 other giant floating cities, just like this one out there. Humans, who used to be so weak, have evolved a ton compared to the past. To rebuild his demon army, they need to figure out exactly how strong humanity has become. So he orders Blackus and Sherry to start gathering intel on the city. He strictly forbids them from using any magic, pointing out that people in this era have completely forgotten that magic even exists. Leonis explains that he is going to blend in with the human soldiers at the academy. He needs food, clothes, and a place to stay. So crashing here is his best move for now. Sherry immediately pouts because she desperately wants to be the one taking care of her cute little demon lord. Eventually, Leonis sends them back to the shadows and walks through the security gate where newcomers are scanned. He is almost busted right then and there because of his intense magical aura, but he manages to suppress his magic just in the nick of time. Leonis gets his ID, and Riselia snaps a picture of him so she can get him registered for the Holy Sword examination. This exam is going to be a huge problem for him, considering the registration requires him to list his Holy Sword powers, which he obviously does not possess. While Riselia is showing him around the academy, Leonis notices how incredibly peaceful the city feels, even though they are practically on the front lines. The reason for the calm is that the Holy Swordsmen are stationed all along the perimeter, making sure no void ever breaches the city walls. Once they arrive at Excalibur Academy, Riselia points out the city's military center. Usually, anyone seeing it for the first time is completely blown away, but Leonis does not give her the shocked reaction she expects. Riselia did not see a shocked reaction on Leonis's face, but honestly, he was totally mind-blown. He had never seen anything that massive back in his era. Riselia then gives Leonis a grand tour of the Academy's various facilities, showing off the huge library, the classrooms, and a bunch of other cool spots. Leonis had never even heard of half of these things before. While she is showing him the arena where his exam will be held tomorrow, Riselia suddenly feels incredibly weak and drops to her knees. She quickly brushes it off, saying she is totally fine and just needs to get some rest so she can get back to training. She is determined to awaken her holy sword as soon as possible. Leonis thinks to himself that she is absolutely right. There is basically no point in a girl being at this academy if she does not even have a holy sword. As they keep walking around the campus, they pass through the girls' dormitory area. Leonis happens to overhear 2 girls chatting. jokingly saying that a kid exactly like him is going to become the next demon lord. Leonis freezes in shock for a second, but quickly reassures himself that it is just a crazy coincidence. There is no way they actually know his true identity. Right then, a student named Musil struts up to Riselia, acting all high and mighty. Just seeing his face completely ruins Riselia's mood. Musil immediately starts mocking her about missing today's mission, loudly claiming that she is dragging her prestigious family's name through the mud. Riselia clearly does not want to deal with his nonsense and tries to walk away with Leonis, but Musil blocks her path, calling her baby and asking who the little loser she is dragging around is. Trying to act tough, Musil laughs out loud and tells Riselia that since she is completely useless in a real fight, she might as well stick to babysitting. Musil then offers Riselia a spot in his platoon. He tells her not to worry, saying he would not just kick her to the curb since she comes from a famous holy swordsman bloodline. He basically tells her that even if she never awakens her holy sword, it is totally fine. She would not ever have to go on a dangerous mission as long as she stays by his side and keeps him entertained. Leonis notices that all the girls trailing behind Musil have completely blank, dead looks in their eyes. He figures they are under some sort of mind control magic, which is probably the specific power of Musil's holy sword. Riselia flat out rejects his creepy offer and tries to leave. Musil's ego takes a massive hit, and he aggressively grabs Riselia's hair, yanking her back. That is when Leonis completely loses it. He glares right at Musil, and just one terrifying look from the Demon Lord makes Musil's legs shake so badly that he drops straight to his knees. Leonis leans in and whispers a chilling threat, telling him that if he even looks at her beautiful hair again, he is dead. Terrified, Musil scrambles back and immediately summons his holy sword. But before a fight can even break out, a girl steps in and yells at Musil. She scolds him for trying to use a holy sword over some personal beef and demands to know what he is even doing in the girls' dorm area, sarcastically asking if he identifies as a girl now. Scared out of his mind, Musil tucks his tail and runs off. Leonis just smirks to himself, knowing the guy wanted a fight but could not have laid a finger on him anyway. The girl who stepped in is Elfin, the intelligence analyst in charge of Riselia's platoon. She has already heard the crazy story about how they found Leonis out in the ruins. Leonis stares at the floating spheres hovering around her, realizing they are her holy sword. Elfin tells Riselia about some fresh clothes she managed to arrange for her and apologizes for missing their mission earlier today. She explains that they were completely swamped because they detected some unnatural magic out in the ocean sector. They tried their best to investigate it, but they still do not have a lot of solid details. She is right in the middle of explaining this when Riselia suddenly starts passing out again. By the evening, they finally make it back to their dorms. Leonis points out that this building looks totally different from all the fancy ones they passed on the way here. Riselia's place is actually pretty old and run down. It turns out that dorm assignments are strictly based on a platoon's overall combat performance. They check on Regina in her room, but the poor girl is already passed out asleep. Using a holy sword completely drains a user's stamina, leaving them totally wiped out. Since it is such an old building, none of the rooms even have locks on the doors. Leonis asks if it is really okay for a guy to be staying in the girls' dorms. Riselia brushes it off, saying it is not a big deal at all since he is just a little kid. She points out where the bathroom is and tells him to go freshen up. While Leonis is getting ready to take a shower, Riselia calls out to him, nervously asking if he would consider joining her platoon once he passes his holy sword exam tomorrow. Hearing Riselia ask if he would join her platoon, Leonis accidentally sneezes. Riselia gets all flustered and tells him to just go take his shower first and they can talk about it later. While showering, Leonis wonders if the hot water is running because of some kind of advanced magic. Just as he is rubbing soap into his hair, Riselia casually walks up right behind him, completely naked, pointing out that you are not supposed to use bar soap on your hair. Leonis completely freaks out. What the heck is he supposed to do? Where is he even supposed to look? Without skipping a beat, she just starts washing his hair with shampoo herself. Leonis thinks to himself that the people in this era are incredibly open-minded. Afterward, Riselia brings up the platoon thing again. Honestly, it is totally up to Leonis which platoon he wants to join. Since healing holy swords are super rare and valuable, even the high-ranking platoons will definitely try to recruit him, and realistically, he has absolutely zero reason to pick Riselia's squad. Leonis straight up asks her why she keeps throwing herself into dangerous fights. Since she does not even have a holy sword, she cannot really protect anyone. She shoots that down immediately, saying she does not want people constantly protecting her and that she wants to fight her own battles. But before she can even finish her sentence, Riselia passes out again. Leonis reactivates the magical crest on her thigh, and her eyes flash red once more. He lifts her up and lets her drink his blood, which snaps her right back to consciousness. Leonis finally comes clean and tells Riselia the absolute truth. He does not actually have a healing holy sword, and he definitely cannot just bring dead people back to life. The harsh reality is that Riselia Ray Cristalia actually died out there in the ruins. The story then flashes back 2 years into the past. Riselia was pushing herself to the absolute limit, desperately trying to awaken her holy sword. She was constantly training with a regular sword, having learned her swordsmanship skills directly from her older sister, and she was convinced that her holy weapon would take the form of a blade. Regina wanted her to take a break, but suddenly, all the training machines just shut down on their own. It was Musil, showing up just to lecture Riselia. He basically told her to stop working so hard for something that is never going to happen, asking why she was even training and telling her to just join his platoon instead. Regina immediately stepped in and pulled out her holy sword. Musil totally chickened out and bolted from the room. Regina told Riselia that once she finally awakens her holy weapon, she will be able to wipe the floor with losers like him in a heartbeat. Stressed out, Riselia replied that she does not even need a holy weapon to do that. Jumping back to the present day, Riselia is fully regaining her senses. The very first thing Leonis tells her as she wakes up is that he used his magic to bring her back to her room, making sure to clarify that he did not touch her or look at her inappropriately while doing so. Riselia asks him who in the world he actually is. He tells her he is a magician and that this is his brand new life. Back in his era, humans actually used magic, and he used his powers to bring her back to life as his vessel, explaining that it is absolutely not the same thing as their holy sword abilities. Resurrecting Riselia as an undead was a massive gamble, but the results were incredibly spectacular. She has actually been reborn as a vampire queen, one of the most powerful undead beings to exist. He explains that she felt so sick yesterday because she was running low on magical energy, which is exactly why she ended up drinking his blood. That is just what naturally happens when a vampire's mana gets depleted. Riselia asks him point blank if this means she really did die out there. Leonis admits he had absolutely no other way to save her life. She then opens up and tells him her backstory. During that massive void attack years ago, her entire family and tons of swordsmen fought on the front lines to protect their people, but not a single one of them made it back alive. She and Regina only survived because they were hiding safely in a civilian shelter. Excalibur Academy had sky-high expectations for her family, hoping they would produce another elite holy swordsman. That is exactly why Riselia has been so desperate to awaken her holy sword as fast as possible so she can actually fight, and it is the whole reason she constantly volunteered for the most dangerous missions. She asks Leonis if it is even possible for her to awaken a holy sword now that she is technically dead. Leonis does not really have a solid answer for that, but he reassures her that she is already way stronger than she used to be. For Riselia, though, that probably does not feel like enough. Right then, Leonis's stomach starts growling incredibly loud since the poor kid has not eaten a single thing since last night. Outside the room, they find Leonis's new academy uniform, which is probably what Elfin was talking about getting for him yesterday. The two of them head down to the cafeteria. Riselia is not hungry at all, likely because she is a vampire now. Aside from bread, Leonis has never really seen this much variety of food before. Riselia immediately starts lecturing him, telling him that just eating bread is not nearly enough nutrition. Leonis claps back, saying that kind of health advice sounds pretty ridiculous coming from an undead. That comment visibly bums Riselia out. Anyway, Riselia says she will go ahead and order his food for him. Leonis insists on paying and confidently whips out a massive gold coin. Seeing that giant chunk of gold, Riselia is completely shell-shocked because that single coin could probably buy the entire restaurant. But then Leonis gets hit with a brutal reality check. In this modern era, gold coins are practically worthless. Apparently, Magic Force Silver is the only currency that actually holds any real value nowadays. Leonis feels totally crushed. He had hoarded mountains of gold to fund his massive demon army, and now it is all just useless metal. Over in the same restaurant, a girl wearing a kimono is getting cornered by two shady guys who are trying to shake her down for cash. She is completely broke and cannot pay them. So the guys creepily tell her that her clothes look pretty nice and actually try to strip them off her. She is not having any of it and immediately teaches them a painful physical lesson. She tells them she is a student here, so she is not going to run or hide anywhere, and tells the TOM to come back next week if they want their money. This girl's name is Sakuya, and it turns out she is also a member of Riselia's platoon. We find out those guys were from a local casino, meaning Sakuya definitely gambled all her money away and lost big time. She also bombed her exams recently, so honestly, she really needs to sit down and study. Sakuya apologizes to Riselia for bailing on their mission yesterday, though it makes total sense why she could not make it. She was way too busy gambling her life savings away.
Sakuya eventually gets introduced to Leonis. The second Leonis shakes her hand, he instantly knows she is a highly experienced sword fighter. After that, the three of them grab lunch together, and Riselia completely covers the bill. While they are eating, Leonis asks Sakuya why her outfit looks so completely different from the standard school uniform. She explains that it is the traditional clothing of her people and that her entire village was wiped out by voids. Now, her only goal in life is to completely eradicate every single void out there. Leonis just thinks to himself that she is yet another crazy girl, obsessed with revenge. Right then, two more girls walk up to Sakuya, demanding the cash she lost to them in a bet. Without missing a beat, Sakuya tells them they are going to have to wait until next week, too. After lunch, Leonis heads straight over to take his official examination. First up, they need to figure out what type of holy sword he has, so they tell him to summon it. Leonis just pulls out his magical staff. When the examiner asks what it can actually do, Leonis plays it cool and says it is a supportive type weapon, depending entirely on the situation. The instructor classifies it as a universal type. Over in the testing area, they have these training robots specifically programmed to act like voids. The examiner explains that since his weapon is a support type, they will need to test its actual power on the robots. But before she can even finish her sentence, Leonis accidentally obliterates every single one of them. He barely even touched the things. The instructor looks at him in complete disbelief, asking how a so-called supportive item could do that. Naturally, a huge crowd starts forming to see what the commotion is all about. While the instructor scrambles to find replacement target dummies for Leonis's test, Musil struts into the arena. He arrogantly announces that he will act as the replacement target, bragging that since he is a first-class government official, he is totally allowed to do whatever he wants. Leonis basically shrugs and tells him he does not mind swapping out the trash dummies for actual trash. That completely pisses Musil off, and he immediately summons his holy sword. But right on cue, the four girls trailing him summon their weapons too. Riselia calls him out, asking if they seriously plan on fighting 5 against 1. Musil just smirks and calls her baby, explaining that this is exactly what his holy sword does. He has the power to completely control other people, making these girls his literal weapons. Leonis is completely unfazed by this. Riselia steps up and declares that she is fighting too, proudly stating that she is Leonis's guardian. Musil agrees to let her jump in, but he throws down a massive bet. If Riselia loses, she has to join his platoon permanently. Leonis confidently accepts the bet on her behalf, but adds his own rule. If Musil loses, he has to leave Riselia alone forever. Leonis silently promises himself that he will never let anyone mess with his vessel. Once Riselia grabs a training weapon, the brawl kicks off. Reselia was already a top-tier sword fighter before, but now that she is a fully awakened vampire, her strength is on a completely different level. She easily takes on all of Musel's mind-controlled puppets, all by herself. One of the girls tries to take a cheap shot at Leonis, but he just effortlessly grabs her legs and sweeps her right to the floor. Meanwhile, Musel is hiding behind the girls, using them as human shields, because he is way too terrified to actually fight head-on. At the exact same time, Regina is sprinting toward the examination hall. She completely overslept and is super late for her own exam, but the absolute chaos she walks into leaves her totally stunned. After Reselia takes down all the girls, she charges straight at Musel. Panicking, Musel uses his holy sword's power to completely freeze her body in place. No matter how hard she struggles, Reselia is completely paralyzed and cannot move an inch. With Reselia immobilized, Musel orders everyone left standing to completely surround Leonis. Leonis is just about to wipe the floor with all of them in a single shot, but then he notices Reselia's hair starting to glow. She keeps repeating over and over that she has to protect him. Suddenly, her hand lights up for everyone to see. Right there in front of the whole crowd, Reselia finally summons her very own holy sword. With a massive surge of power, she shatters Musel's spell, completely destroying his holy sword in the process. The shockwave snaps all the girls out of their trance. Realizing he is totally beat, Musel throws his hands up and surrenders on the spot. Regina is so incredibly thrilled that she tackles Reselia in a huge hug, crying out that she always believed in her. Later on, when they get back to the dorms, Reselia sincerely thanks Leonis. Leonis just brushes it off, telling her that she did all the heavy lifting herself and calling her his loyal vessel. Confused, Reselia asks him what he means by the word vessel. He smoothly explains that a vessel is someone who dedicates their life to protecting their lord. Reselia absolutely loves that idea and happily promises she will always protect him. She also asks him for a massive favor. She wants him to train her to become even stronger. Leonis is completely on board with that idea. Shortly after, the squad throws a pretty awesome party to celebrate Reselia finally awakening her weapon and Leonis officially joining their platoon. Everyone starts throwing out different name ideas for her new holy sword, but Reselia shoots them down. She feels like she still has not tapped into the weapon's true power yet, and she refuses to name it until she unlocks its full potential. After the party, Elfin pulls Leonis aside, telling him he needs to swing by her room to officially register his biometric data. Since they are on the topic of rooms, the whole living situation gets brought up, because there are 0 empty beds left in the dorms. Regina immediately offers to let him crash in her room, promising to hook him up with tons of amazing food. Sakria chimes in, saying he can totally take her room, since she is practically never there anyway. Reselia quickly shuts both of them down, insisting it makes the most sense for Leonis to just stay with her. Leonis backs her up, pointing out that Reselia was the one who found him in the first place, and that he honestly likes hanging out with her. Once that is settled, Elfin takes Leonis to her room to get his data sorted out. While they are setting things up, Leonis asks her about her specific holy sword, the Eye of the Witch. Elfin explains that its main gimmick is analyzing situations and transferring data, though it actually used to pack some serious firepower. However, during a past mission, a vicious void attack wiped out her entire team. The trauma from that day completely blocked her from accessing her weapon's true offensive power ever since. In fact, Reselia was the only person kind enough to invite her into a platoon after that incident. While looking around Elfin's room, Leonis spots a digital map of the city pulled up on a monitor. Elfin tosses him a tablet so he can check it out himself. Looking at the map, Leonis starts visualizing exactly where his massive empire used to be 1,000 years ago, picturing where all his armies were stationed. Later, in private, Leonis summons Blackus to get an intel update. Blackus reports that he found a giant magical crystal buried deep within the island's core, which the humans apparently call a magical furnace. Leonis points out that demon lords used to harness the power of similar crystals to physically move their castles around. Blackus explains that this setup is totally different. The humans have built an incredibly complex circuit system around the crystal to power the entire floating city. Hearing this, Leonis immediately starts plotting a way to claim that massive power source for himself. Once Blackus heads out, Sherry pops out of the shadows. Leonis asks for her intel report, but instead of giving him info, she just hands him a box of donuts. He takes a bite, and when she asks how it is, he admits it actually tastes pretty great. Sherry gets super excited and tries to shove even more food in his face, but Leonis cuts her off, ordering her to focus on giving him intel about the world instead of acting like a personal chef. She gets serious and tells him the craziest news yet. Absolutely nobody in this era knows a single thing about him, and they have completely forgotten about the massive war that happened 1,000 years ago. Leonis is completely baffled, wondering how humanity could possibly just forget an apocalyptic war. Sherry asks Leonis if there is a problem with him turning Reselia into his vessel. She playfully calls him an idiot, and, by the way, they have been communicating telepathically this whole time. Leonis gets annoyed, wondering how she has the nerve to call him an idiot. He explains to her that Reselia is a top-tier vessel, a literal vampire queen. If he trains her right, she could easily become his ultimate weapon. Sherry starts getting insanely jealous, but before she can complain, Reselia calls out for Leonis, prompting Sherry to quickly vanish into the shadows. Meanwhile, deep underwater, some human troops are running an investigation. They spot something strange attached to one of the island's massive pillars. As they get closer, they realize the weird, root-like structure actually has eyes staring right back at them. The story then flashes way back to the distant past, back when Leonis was known as a legendary hero. He had just defeated a dark lord and brought peace to the land. While the other heroes stayed behind to protect the royal capital and the holy city, Leonis traveled all over the place, saving everyday people from monster attacks. One day, he was heading out to stop a gargoyle invasion, but the guy guiding him suddenly vanished down a dead-end alley. Before Leonis could even draw his sword, he was ambushed with binding magic. They chained him up completely like a prisoner and brutally assassinated him. It turns out the king of the royal capital was the one who ordered the hit, because the general public was starting to respect Leonis way more than the crown. After the assassins left, Roselia stepped out of the shadows. She looked at his dying body and asked if he knew this was going to happen. Leonis admitted he had a feeling it was coming. The very humans he dedicated his life to protecting were the ones who betrayed him. Despite that, he did not want revenge, because he honestly did not hold a grudge against them. Roselia told him that she planned to challenge the entire world and that she had been watching him this whole time. She admitted she liked him and asked him to join her side, offering him a new life as a demon lord. Snapping back to the present day, Leonis reflects on all of this. His main goals now are to track down Roselia and rebuild his army. Suddenly, he feels something weird on his neck. He reaches over and wakes Roselia up. She is totally confused until Leonis points out the magical crest on her body, explaining that it allows him to completely control his vessels. Roselia gets super flustered and asks if that means he can force her to do absolutely anything. Leonis immediately shuts that down, promising he would never do something like that. Roselia smiles, knowing he is a total gentleman. Leonis shoots back that she should probably act like a gentlewoman, pointing out the fresh vampire bite marks on his neck. Super embarrassed, she explains that her vampire cravings kicked in during the night, and she just could not control herself, so she ended up drinking his blood while he slept. She apologizes profusely and promises to be more careful next time. Right then, Elfin calls Roselia with some interesting news. The higher-ups have been summoned for a massive strategy meeting regarding the underwater investigation in the ocean sector. Elfin does not have all the details yet, but she promises to keep Roselia in the loop. Since they do not have any classes at the academy today, Roselia decides they should head over to the local orphanage to help out. Meanwhile, over at the control tower, the high-stakes meeting is already underway. It has been 11 hours since they completely lost contact with platform number 13, and they are assuming everyone stationed there is dead. Right before the connection dropped, they picked up a void signal, but it mysteriously vanished after just 3 seconds. something that has literally never happened before. The last thing they received was a blurry image of something that looked like giant tree roots. The commanders are left wondering if this is some brand new type of void, or worse, a legendary void lord. The commanders know they need to brace themselves, so the absolute massacre that happened 6 years ago at the 3rd Assault Garden does not repeat itself here. The 7th Assault Garden's defense is incredibly solid. The Holy Swordsmen are constantly prepping for the future, and even everyday private citizens run through daily training drills. The main focus of the strategy meeting is figuring out their exact game plan against these voids. Right in the middle of it, the top brass calls in with a final decision. Since it has been a while, and they have not picked up any new void signals, they are sending a heavily armed, much larger squad back down into the ocean sector. The acting commander gives a strict order. Absolutely do not let the voids get anywhere near the magical crystal. Meanwhile, we see Roselia out on the training field. The Academy's standard training robots are just way too easy for her now. Since she is officially a vampire, Leonis decides it is time for her to learn some real magic. He sets up a cloaking barrier so nobody can snoop on them, and then he summons a horde of undead skeletal minions. Roselia is totally blown away, since she has never seen anything like this before. She dives in and starts taking them down incredibly fast. The intense training session drags on for a long time, until she is completely wiped out and exhausted. Leonis finally drops the barrier and dismisses his skeletons. Roselia is actually getting a really solid grip on her new superhuman body, and Leonis is thrilled because he wants his vessel to keep leveling up. To thank him for the training, she offers to buy him lunch. Leonis tries to play it cool and tells her she does not need to spend her cash on him every single time. But right on cue, his stomach starts growling loudly again. While all this is happening, the massive underwater operation officially kicks off. Back at the dorms, Sakuya finally strolls in from an all-nighter of gambling, but this time, she actually raked in some serious bucks instead of losing it all. Outside the building, Leonis's shadow servant, Blackass, is just sitting there, chilling like a guard dog. Since he does not have a collar, Sakuya assumes he is just a stray. She instantly falls in love with him, gives him the goofy name Black Steel Fluffykin, ties a little bag of food around his neck, and heads inside. Inside the room, Regina has cooked up a brand new recipe and asks everyone to taste test it. Sakuya walks in and starts gushing about the cool stray dog she just found outside, bragging about how soft his fur was, and explaining her ridiculous nickname for him. Regina hands her a plate of food, then looks over at Elfin and asks why she is fully suited up in her uniform on their day off. Elfin explains that the instructors could call her in at any given second because she is managing all the live data for the underwater op. So far, headquarters still has no clue if voids are actually behind the anomaly or if it is something else entirely. While they are talking, they suddenly hear loud snoring. Sakuya literally passed out, sitting straight up in her chair. On another note, Sherry actually went out and got a job at a local diner, just so she could earn some bucks to buy tasty snacks for her lord. Her very first task is chopping potatoes, but she pulls out her deadly assassin daggers and accidentally slices right through the pots and pans, along with the veggies. Her boss immediately demotes her to sweeping the sidewalk outside. While she is out there, she spots Leonis and Roselia walking down the street. Sherry quickly ducks out of sight, burning with intense jealousy. She practically loses her mind when Roselia casually asks Leonis to hold her bag. Sherry mutters to herself that her lord is letting this vessel get way too comfortable. As they walk away, she cannot help but wonder where the heck they are heading. It turns out, Roselia is taking Leonis to a local orphanage that also doubles as a small diner. The second they walk in, all the kids are super stoked to see her. Roselia actually hangs out there all the time to help out with chores. Walking into the orphanage hits Leonis with a heavy wave of nostalgia, because he actually grew up as an orphan himself back in his era. Right away, one of the rowdy kids starts messing around with Roselia. Leonis is just about to use his shadow magic to teach the brat a painful lesson, but Reselia quickly stops him. She tells him to chill out because he is just a little kid. The owners of the place ask Reselia about Leonis, and she proudly tells them that he is a holy swordsman too. Hearing that, the kids go absolutely crazy and start climbing all over him. Reselia finally distracts the mob by announcing she brought a box of donuts, giving Leonis a desperate second to breathe. Looking around, it suddenly clicks for Leonis. This cozy little orphanage is the exact place Reselia is fighting so hard to protect. It deeply reminds him of the sanctuary he once swore to protect in his past life. Meanwhile, the new heavily armed platoon finally reaches the exact underwater coordinates where that creepy root-like monster was last spotted. At first glance, the area looks completely deserted, but suddenly, things start going completely crazy beneath the ocean surface. The tremors are so intense that Sakuya and Elfin can actually feel the vibrations all the way up in their dorm room. Down at the underground base, the troops realize massive, terrifying vines are already spreading everywhere. Panic sets in as they scramble to figure out what the heck this thing is and how it managed to get there. We get another flashback to Leonis's past life when his kingdom was under siege by a massive horde of monsters. The great sage announced they did not have time to wait around for backup. Since the monsters were rapidly closing in on the castle walls, the great sage whipped up an artificial sun, planning to burn the creatures alive. The catch was that the intense heat was actually hurting regular people way more than the monsters. But the great sage was totally fine with sacrificing civilians to win. 12-year-old Leonis was not having it. He drew his sword, sliced right through the great sage's magic, and casually mentioned that killing monsters while keeping people alive was a lot of work. With that, he leaped right into the middle of the monster army. He single-handedly slaughtered the entire horde and became a literal savior to the people. But ironically, his own party members ended up turning against him in the end. Snapping back to the present day, we see that massive monster rapidly spreading through the underground station. The scene cuts to the control room, where they have officially dubbed this void as UK 6402. It has completely vanished from their underwater scanners again, leaving the investigation team totally in the dark. Right then, a staffer tells the acting commander that a swordsman from the 18th platoon wants to submit an urgent report. The advisor rolls his eyes, assuming a double-digit platoon means it is just some inexperienced student. However, the staffer clarifies that this girl is a top-tier analyst. Once the advisor realizes she is from Elfin's prestigious family, he immediately gives her clearance. Mostly because her dad did in a solid back in the Weapons Development Council. Elfin starts firing off her findings. She reports detecting incredibly bizarre vibrations echoing through various sectors of the 7th Assault Garden. Even crazier, she picked up actual magical wave signatures, which makes absolutely zero sense, since nobody in this modern era uses magic. On top of that, there are massive magnetic field disruptions, totally messing with their mobile communication networks. She notes that a very similar catastrophic event was recorded in the past. Elfin's report leaves the higher-ups totally speechless. Voids are just mindless beasts. They are not supposed to be smart enough to pull off a coordinated stealth attack like this. But the science team backs up Elfin's data 100%. The advisor is baffled, demanding to know how this thing dodged their scanners. The researchers explain that the void is currently way too small for normal radar to pick up, meaning this monster can likely shrink or grow its body on command. That is exactly why it has been a total nightmare to track down. When asked how it even broke into the underground base in the first place, the researchers guess it is squeezing through tiny gaps in the city's armored foundation. Suddenly, the control room gets a distress signal about an attack in Section 31. At the exact same time, the underground material management warehouse reports that massive tree roots are aggressively spreading through the facility. Knowing a full-blown war is about to kick off, Elfin sends an urgent message to Reselia and Leonis at the Sunny Spot Orphanage, warning them to stay on high alert. Meanwhile, back at the diner, Sherry's boss is angrily looking everywhere for her, since she completely ditched her shift and vanished into thin air. Back at the orphanage, Leonis is getting super annoyed by all the rowdy, bratty kids who have zero manners. But then, a sweet little girl shyly hands him her handkerchief. Blushing, she tells him she thinks it is incredibly cool that he can use a holy sword. Suddenly, back at the control room, Alpha 1 manages to transmit a live picture from the underground warehouse. The entire room is completely overrun by those creepy roots. Out of nowhere, the roots literally turn and stare right into the camera, just before the video feed cuts to static. This void clearly understands that humanity's anti-air defenses are practically impenetrable, but they are totally exposed underground. To make matters worse, the head commander is not answering his phone, leaving everyone in the control room panicking and completely clueless about what their next move should be. A little while later, communications with Alpha 1 finally come back online, but there is bad news. The squad had to retreat, and the void has completely vanished once again. This specific monster is seriously throwing humanity for a loop. It is just leaving a trail of absolute destruction, and the military has no clue what its actual endgame is. Suddenly, Elfin reports a massive energy leak coming from the main supply lines. Tracking the void's movements alongside the power drain, it becomes blatantly obvious that the creature is making a beeline straight for the magical furnace. That is the colossal crystal that powers the entire floating city. If this thing is actually a void lord, it is definitely planning to siphon the crystal's energy to wipe out the whole place. The top brass immediately orders everyone to protect the furnace at all costs. Down below, the void's creepy roots have already breached the furnace chamber, but humanity's defense forces are throwing everything they have at it to hold the line. Up in the control room, the advisor tells the vice commander that since the head honcho is still missing in action, he has to step up and run the show. The vice commander takes the reins without hesitation. Knowing they have to stop this monster no matter what, he orders every single soldier and holy swordsman to gear up and get ready for an all-out war. While the 7th Assault Garden is facing a total crisis, Leonis is stuck at the orphanage, completely surrounded by a bunch of annoying kids. They keep begging him to show off his holy sword. Reselia nudges him to just humor them, but there is no way he is going to do that. Instead, he tries to distract them by promising to show them something way cooler. He summons a few of his tiny skeletal minions to put on a little magic show, but the kids are totally creeped out and absolutely hate it. Meanwhile, despite the military throwing everything they have at it, the void finally breaches the magical furnace. The massive power fluctuations cause blackouts and crazy energy spikes all over the city. Leonis and Reselia step outside to see what is going on. Reselia notices the central control tower shifting into full lockdown mode, and right on cue, the sky rips open as a swarm of voids starts pouring in. It is crystal clear that a brand new war for survival has just begun. The military is forced to completely shut down the magical furnace to keep the void from absorbing all its power. The city can run on backup generators for a while, but getting reinforcements from the main capital is going to take at least 3 days. The higher-ups start panicking, debating if they can even survive a 3-day siege. But one of the officials speaks up, proudly stating that the elite swordsmen trained right here at the academy are not just going to sit around and wait for 3 days to fight back. An all-out offensive is launched to hold off the voids. Out on the streets, Sakuya is slicing through monsters with her lightning cutter. Elfin is using her Eye of the Witch to coordinate strikes, and Regina is blowing things up with her heavy dragon blaster. The three of them are holding the line, refusing to let any voids get near the city center. Watching them in action, even Leonis has to admit that modern humanity packs some serious firepower. Back at the orphanage, Reselia is desperately trying to radio the academy, but the communications are completely jammed. Starting to panic, she rushes back inside to make sure the kids are safe. The second she is out of earshot, Sherry pops out of the shadows. She briefs Leonis on the massive monster invasion spreading across the entire city and asks for his orders. Leonis smirks and asks how her timing always manages to be so incredibly perfect. Sherry quickly gets defensive, swearing she was not stalking him to see what he was doing with his brand new vessel. Leonis instantly knows she has been spying on him the whole time, even though she insists it was just a total coincidence. He gives her a strict order to head out and protect Ryselia's friends on the front lines. Sherry immediately pouts because she really wants to stay and protect him instead. But since it is a direct command from her lord, she has no choice but to obey and vanish into the shadows. Right after she leaves, Leonis looks up at the chaotic sky. Inside, Ryselia is trying to herd all the orphans toward an emergency evacuation shelter, but Leonis stops them right at the door, warning her that there are massive dragon voids swarming right outside. Realizing it is too dangerous to move, Ryselia orders the kids to stay hidden inside the building. She immediately summons her holy sword and steps out to face the dragons alone. She is terrified, but there is absolutely no way she is going to abandon those kids. Leonis is actually pretty impressed by her bravery, so he steps up right beside her and readies his magical staff. Ryselia moves incredibly fast, slicing the heads off a couple of voids, while Leonis easily incinerates the other two with a blast of fire. Ryselia is totally stunned by how much raw power he just unleashed. But they do not get a second to breathe, because the monsters just keep coming. Suddenly, a massive, multi-headed Hydra-class void crashes down right in front of them. On top of that, an ultra-rare dragon void touches down, tearing through the city streets and causing absolute chaos. Leonis knows this is not something they can just take down with a few casual hits. He turns to Ryselia and tells her to cover him and buy him some time, so he can charge up a massive, high-level magic spell. Without hesitating, Ryselia dives right into the fight, clashing with the beasts to keep them distracted. At this point, you are probably wondering why a legendary demon lord is going out of his way to save a bunch of random humans. Honestly, Leonis could not care less if the entire human city gets wiped off the map, but there is absolutely no way he is going to let some random monster step up and disrespect him. He unleashes a massive level 10 spell, raining a brutal meteor shower right down on the dragon. But even after taking a direct hit with that much raw power, the dragon is somehow still standing. Leonis is temporarily stuck because his new human body just is not ready to fire off another attack that massive right away. Thankfully, Ryselia jumps right into the middle of the chaos, aggressively fighting the beast and buying him the crucial seconds he needs. Once he catches his breath, Leonis uses his manipulation magic to completely obliterate the dragon. But before they can even take a breather, the ground violently splits open beneath them. Massive void roots burst out of the earth, grab Ryselia, and drag her deep underground. As Leonis dives in to save her, huge vines twist together to form a giant, creepy face. This Void Master clearly knows who Leonis is, and Leonis recognizes him instantly too. It is none other than the Great Sage. The story quickly flashes back to the past, right after Leonis had officially become the immortal Dark Lord. He brought back mountains of gold for Ryselia, and had completely embraced his new life as a demon lord, mastering all sorts of incredibly powerful spells. During that time, he also became close friends with the Prince of the Kingdom of Shadows, who happens to be his current shadow servant, Blackass. To celebrate one of his massive victories, Ryselia offered him a gift. She summoned his original hero, Holy Sword, but seeing it just made Leonis depressed, because he wanted nothing to do with his past life as a human. So, Ryselia completely transformed the blade into the demon sword. However, the sword came with a massive catch. It could not be drawn from its scabbard unless a very specific condition was met. While the exact details are not revealed to us, Leonis knows exactly what it takes. All we know is that the sword heavily questions the absolute truth and resolve of the person trying to wield it. Snapping back to the present, Leonis calls the Great Sage by his other title, the Oracle. He admits he never expected to run into him 1,000 years in the future. Leonis quickly realizes that the Oracle is trying to spawn even more voids. so he instantly blasts him with a heavy flame spell. The oracle dodges the attack and retreats deeper underground. Leonis knows Reselia is still alive because the magical crest on his body has not faded away. It is obvious the oracle's plan is to drag her far away, but Leonis is already dead set on wiping him and his entire monster army out of existence. Blackas steps out of the shadows, noting that their ancient enemy has returned, but looks completely different now. He points out that the oracle basically looks and acts like the leader of the voids. Blackas theorizes that if the oracle managed to revive after 1,000 years, Reselia has to be out there somewhere too. Blackass then looks over at the orphanage kids standing outside and asks what these humans are doing, just hanging around in a war zone, putting themselves in extreme danger. He notices the kids are staring wide-eyed at Leonis and asks if they want something. Leonis assumes the kids are absolutely terrified of him after seeing his brutal, destructive magic, since he has seen humans given that exact same look of fear in his past life. He tells the kids to hurry up and get inside to safety, but instead of running away, the little girl sincerely thanks him. She tells him that they are totally fine and begs him to go save their big sister, Reselia. Leonis is genuinely surprised, wondering to himself if these kids really do not hate him after all. He promises the children that he will bring Reselia back safe and sound, which instantly makes them cheer up. To make sure they stay safe, he throws up a magical barrier around the building and leaves a few of his skeleton warriors behind to stand guard. Meanwhile, Blackas opens the little bag of food tied around his neck. He mentions that some girl near their dorm hooked him up with it, and since he was getting hungry, he casually eats a snack. Suddenly, Reselia's voice crackles through a communicator on the ground. Leonis realizes she must have dropped her earpiece during the ambush. Looking up, he spots Elfin's floating holy sword, hovering right above him like a drone. On the other side of the city, Sakuya and Regina are desperately trying to hold off a terrifying multi-headed monster while trying to contact Reselia. Leonis picks up the earpiece and tells Elfin that a void snatched Reselia. He demands her exact coordinates so he can hunt the thing down and get her back. Elfin tells him not to do anything stupid and to wait for district backup, but Leonis coldly replies that there is nobody else around and the regular troops probably could not handle this anyway. Using her Eye of the Witch, Elfin scans the battlefield and is completely horrified by the sheer amount of destruction. Leonis tells her to just trust him. She finally tracks down Reselia's signal, but she is completely shocked to find out it is coming from right inside the central magical furnace. At that exact same moment, the massive multi-headed beast is about to crush Sakuya and Regina, but out of nowhere, a blindingly fast blade slices through the air, completely severing all of the monster's heads in one clean strike. It was Sherry, who immediately vanishes back into the shadows the second the job is done. Meanwhile, Leonis is sprinting toward the magical furnace at full speed. As they run, Blackas asks Leonis the golden question: why in the world did a demon lord just send his elite assassin to save a bunch of random humans? Leonis replies that Elfin's holy sword is actually incredibly useful, and that Regina is his vessel's personal maid. But Blackas is not buying those excuses, and presses him further, asking why he bothered putting up a protective magical barrier for those random orphans. Leonis snaps back, asking, "So what if I actually like those humans? Do you have a problem with that?" Blackas just smirks and says that is the honest answer he was looking for. Smashing right through the wall in front of them, they finally arrive at the magical furnace, only to find that the oracle has completely taken it over. Leonis immediately launches a fire attack, torching the oracle's roots. But the oracle is not messing around, and instantly regenerates the damage. The oracle looks at Leonis and demands to know how he is even alive, claiming he wiped Leonis out 1,000 years ago. Leonis just calls him an idiot, explaining that he never actually died. He just sealed his own soul away. The oracle shoots back, calling Leonis the real idiot. He brags that the world has drastically changed and is about to be completely reborn alongside something called the Void Planet. Leonis is totally confused and demands to know what the heck a Void Planet is. but the oracle completely ignores the question. Suddenly, dozens of tiny mouths sprout all over the oracle's body, and every single one of them starts singing a creepy, holy chant. Leonis realizes the oracle must have absorbed all the priests from the ancient holy order. Leonis tries to reach Roselia through her earpiece. Roselia can hear him, but she is completely pinned down by the roots and cannot break free. Leonis and Blackass start dodging the massive vines and launch a coordinated assault, but their spells are barely leaving a scratch. The magical furnace is pumping the oracle full of so much raw energy that he is practically invincible. The oracle unleashes a massive, overwhelming attack, using all of his faces at once. Leonis and Blackass try to counter it, but their efforts are totally useless. Meanwhile, trapped inside the massive roots, Roselia is fighting her own desperate internal battle. She struggles so violently against her restraints that she starts bleeding from multiple spots. She beats herself up mentally, hating the fact that even after getting a second chance at life and new powers, people still have to come rescue her. She desperately wants to be the one saving others. Suddenly, her latent vampire powers start surging. Her spilled blood transforms into razor-sharp blood blades that slice right through the thick vines holding her down. At that exact moment, Leonis finally pinpoints her exact location. He shoots a magical projectile straight at her chest. It hits its mark, fully awakening Roselia's vampire queen powers. With a massive burst of energy, she literally tears her way out of the oracle's body and breaks free. Right as she escapes, Blackass reaches his limit and has to vanish back into the shadows to recover. Furious, the oracle screams at Leonis, demanding to know what he just did. Leonis casually explains that he just gave Roselia a tiny drop of his own magical blood, which gave her an insane power boost. As Roselia falls from the massive root monster, our hero steps up and catches her right out of the air. She pulls out the little crystal earring he shot at her and asks if that was really his blood. By this point, the oracle has completely healed his wounds again and is absolutely furious. He starts charging up a devastating level 10 magic spell to obliterate Leonis, fully intending to burn the entire city to ashes in the process. Leonis knows there is only one way to stop an attack of that magnitude. He has to completely erase the oracle from existence. He asks Roselia to buy him just a little bit of time. Without hesitation, Roselia unleashes her new powers, using her own blood to summon a flurry of blades that slice the oracle's tentacles to shreds. Seeing his opening, Leonis gets ready to draw his ultimate weapon, the demon sword. He remembers the sword's incredibly strict conditions. Even though Roselia's blessing transformed it from a holy sword into a demon sword, it still carries a righteous will. The blade will absolutely refuse to leave its scabbard unless Leonis is genuinely drawing it to protect his kingdom. Gripping the hilt, Leonis loudly declares that the 7th Assault Garden is his brand new kingdom. The people living there are his subjects, and it is his absolute duty to protect them.